boys! Reg and back with you to review the latest pro wrestling news and results of wrestling! WrestleMania! Yeah, let's go! Rock and roll! It's RANTROSPECTIVE time! And we are going to be taking a look at WrestleMania VII, the second in our series from all of the WrestleManias in Southern California. We're going to be doing 5 rants total here in the RANTROSPECTIVE series on WrestleMania in SoCal. This is number 2, WrestleMania VII. The big spectacle that should have been, but ended up not being as big of a spectacle as it was. Let's give it a little whirl, part of RANTROSPECTIVE here. We're going to be taking a deep dive into WrestleMania VII and everything about it, including some trivia you might not know about the show, some behind-the-scenes information, as well as a breakdown of all the matches, my thoughts on them, star ratings, overall feel of the show, you name it, as part here of RANTROSPECTIVE. I got the Mega Rant mask on as well, just to celebrate that this is a pretty extensive dive of a rant here. So we're going to throw a little Mega Rant on this one. Let's talk about what else we got coming up here within the next couple, I would say 24 hours. We're going to have a couple more rants. One particular we're going to be dropping tonight after the Sacrifice pay-per-view from Impact on Impact Plus, the Ultimate Insiders on YouTube, etc. That show has gotten very interesting very fast because both the Impact World Champion Josh Alexander, Mickie James, the Women's Champion, they're out of the show. Injuries have hit Impact Wrestling, and both their major champions are now not going to appear on that show. They are vacating the titles. There will be some more information I'll talk about as part of the Sacrifice Mega Rant coming up later on, where we're going to break down everything from Sacrifice. I'm going to watch it live tonight. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the information with Josh Alexander and Mickie James as well, and find out what it all means for Impact Wrestling. Coming up later on a Mega Rant, Impact Sacrifice is just about to start up from behind me here. You see a little thing on the screen that is just literally minutes away for the countdown show. So you'll probably see that in the background a little bit as I talk about WrestleMania 7. Also, Versus is coming up. That is the weekly look at Ring of Honor against Impact. I just got to finish watching Ring of Honor, and we'll talk about that tomorrow, more than likely, for Versus this week. And then also this weekend, I'm hoping to get caught up a little bit more with these RANTROSPECTIVE rants, as we got 2 rants to talk about the WrestleManias at the Anaheim Pond, particularly. Those were the next 2 WrestleManias consecutively as part of the SoCal series WrestleManias. Then we'll finish it all off sometime next week with the final of these rants, and that is WrestleMania 21, the first iteration of WrestleMania Goes Hollywood. I was there too, so I'll have a lot of perspective from the live event from yours truly. That was my second WrestleMania that I had attended. I'll be talking all about that in a really big RANTROSPECTIVE Mega Rant on WrestleMania 21. But let's get into WrestleMania 7. Finally, without any further ado, let's get into it. March 24th, 1991 from the LA Sports Arena. It's also, as we talked about previously, in the WrestleMania 2 RANTROSPECTIVE, same location as WrestleMania 2. A little bit of a bigger crowd officially. I don't know on an unofficial level if that was true or not, but the tally from WWF at the time was 16,158 at the LA Sports Arena for this event. Dave Meltzer claimed the paid attendance was only about 10,500, according to a little information Wikipedia I found about WrestleMania 7. So the question is, what was the actual attendance? Maybe somewhere, a little more than 10.5 when you add comps and things like that. This may have been a WrestleMania that had many comp tickets. It's very well possible with all the controversy that went around with it. Superstars and Stripes Forever was the tagline. Also, another tagline that Gorilla Monsoon talked about a lot on the broadcast that was fed to him clearly by Vince in the headset. The largest pay-per-view audience of all time. Now, I don't know what that means exactly, other than probably there was more pay-per-view access for the public that's not necessarily in tune with the idea that perhaps more people ordered this pay-per-view than any other WrestleMania, etc., etc. I would think back in this period, WrestleMania 6, perhaps even WrestleMania 3, would have probably got a little better pay-per-view penetration and people actually checking it out, but hard to say what exactly that means by WWF's largest pay-per-view audience of all time moniker. I'll just talk a little bit quickly about my personal experience with WrestleMania VII. We didn't have pay-per-view at the time around our area, so actually watched it at a local sports bar in town here with family and a lot of friends, and there was a lot of people at the sports bar. I think they may not have even charged us to see it. We just had to buy food there, so that was kind of a good deal, but a lot of cool memories from seeing past big WWF shows at these sports bars downtown in the city I still live in here in Mankato, Minnesota. So that's kind of my personal experience with it. I remember as a kid seeing it there and being quite fascinated with everything that was happening in the show. I remember back as a kid, though, I thought to myself, this is a long show. It went almost 4 hours. It was a good 3.5 plus hours. From a live perspective, it was probably about 4 when you count the intermission time with it as well. So I remember as a kid thinking this was a very long show. I think WrestleMania's back at this period also started in the afternoon, so it was a little bit easier to handle seeing a afternoon WrestleMania about 4 hours versus maybe one in the evening that would go a little bit too late. This was a little bit easier to deal with as a child watching the show for sure. All right, let's talk about it. Let's get into the controversy behind this event. A lot of people know the story behind it. The LA Memorial Coliseum, which holds upwards of 100,000 people, was the original host for WrestleMania, the original site. I was there for a concert back about 10, 15 years ago, by the way. It's quite the big stadium, no question about it. I thought to myself when I was at that concert what it would have been like if WrestleMania would have been at that huge outdoor arena. It would have been a spectacle, no question about it. Controversy, of course, arose a few different ways. The situation with the Iraq War and Sergeant Slaughter being the Iraqi sympathizer. There was some conjecture that there was potential threats and maybe that security would have to be really amped up for this show because of the connection with Sergeant Slaughter being the Iraqi sympathizer. Back in the day, here in 1991, people weren't completely on board with the whole idea that wrestling is predetermined. Some people still thought it wasn't. So there was a bit of, I guess, tension in the air over concerns about the LA Coliseum with the wide open area that it is to not be able to secure anything in case, God forbid, there was someone tried to drop a bomb on top of the place or something like that. On that end, I felt like maybe it was WWF's way of getting out of a bad situation by using that as an excuse. Bruce Pritchard was quoted on his podcast as stating that the cost for security alone would have put WrestleMania in the red for this one, and it just naturally was not able to be done because of that as well. The other element of it was the poor ticket sales going into this show. A few months into WrestleMania time, the word on a lot of the newsletters and things like that was that there was around maybe 11, 12,000, and maybe upwards of 15,000 tickets sold at this point. So you can imagine how that would look for this company if 15,000 people attended a WrestleMania that was supposed to hold 100,000. So because of that, they moved the event. This has tones a little bit, just very slightly, of how they moved Money in the Bank last year in Las Vegas from the big Allegiant Stadium, which was a bad idea to begin with. They had SummerSlam there the year prior. Not even a year later, they tried to do that again. Ticket sales were not very strong. It didn't warrant it. They rolled back. They decided to not do that event in the big stadium. And just like Las Vegas, they went to a small arena. And because they hadn't sold too many tickets, they actually were able to just kind of place people, give them seats guaranteed for WrestleMania in the sports arena that would be kind of similar to where they got tickets for WrestleMania at the Coliseum, from what I understand. So they really didn't have to give anybody technically refunds, so that saved them a lot of money as well. I think some people requested refunds perhaps at this point, but if they had sold about 15,000, the capacity for the LA Sports Arena was around that, a little bit over that actually, pushing it around I think the 18 to 19,000 range. So by that token, they were able to fill everybody. Everybody was kind of happy in that aspect. But like I said, the question was how much was really sold. Dave Meltzer, the Wrestling Observer newsletter back in the day, was quoted as stating that the paid attendance, meaning paid tickets, was around only 10,500. Now that could be after changing over to the arena. Maybe a lot of people requested refunds, so maybe there was more initially sold than that, but by the end of it, that's what it kind of came down to. In retrospect, it probably was a good idea in many ways. Obviously, it would have looked weird to have 15,000 people in a huge stadium like that, but the weather ended up being absolute garbage that day. It was cold and actually rained the entire day, so WWF kind of got a break on that one, because if they would have done that event at the Coliseum on top of poor ticket sales, poor attendance, it would have been rained out probably also. A few little notes that you might not know. Speaking about the Iraqi turncoat gimmick, that was originally not penciled in for Sergeant Slaughter. According, I think, again, to Bruce Pritchard's podcast, originally was supposed to be, of all people, Fred Ottman, the Shockmaster. In WWF, he was known as Tugboat. He was apparently supposed to be the Iraqi sympathizer gimmick. I'm glad that didn't work out. They were actually going to call him Sheik Tugboat. This is shit I read online, folks. Take it with a grain of salt, but I think it came from Bruce Pritchard, who may not be completely honest himself, but there you go. Another thing to note, Bob Costas of NBC Sports, pulled out of this event about maybe a month before WrestleMania because of his opinions on the Iraqi war and how he felt WWE was being a bit exploitive in that aspect. He pulled out of the event. They had announced him ahead of time. They had to rescind it, essentially, because he pulled out of the event. That might explain why down the road you have seen publicly when Bob Costas has gotten together with Vince McMahon, it has not gone well. That might be a big reason why there's that animosity there. Another thing to note, there was an agreement, if you recall, on this show, there was a couple of Japanese wrestlers, Tenryu and Koji Kitayo. And that was an agreement with Super World Sports out of Japan to do a co-partnership where Tenryu and Kateo appeared on this show. Tenryu also appeared at, I believe, the 1993 Royal Rumble, if I recall. And it was a multi-year agreement that the company had with, which I believe was Tenryu's company, Super World Sports. They had many shows in Japan. One particular was in the Tokyo Dome. And Hogan wrestled Tenryu. This was on the 12th of December of 1991, so later in this year. And you got to find that match. I just watched it, actually, when I was in Vegas for the Impact run not too long ago. And that match was phenomenal. We found it for free on the Amazon Fire Stick on one of the wrestling channels on there. And that match was great. You really should go out and find that match if you can. Hogan against Tenryu from December 1991. If you want to see Hogan work a completely different style, shit you wouldn't expect. He was pulling enziguri kicks. It was just crazy. Another thing to note with this agreement, as a follow-up from the WrestleMania appearance of Tenryu and Kateo, a week later in Japan, Hogan actually teamed up with Tenryu against, of all teams, the Road Warriors, Legion of Doom. So that's a match I have not yet seen, I don't believe, but I may try to see if I can dig a little bit and find that one. So let's get into the actual pay-per-view portion of the show here. A lot of stuff happening on WrestleMania 7. A total of 15 matches, 14 televised. It was a dark match to kick off WrestleMania 7. And that was Coco Beware against the Brooklyn Brawler. Coco Beware went over in about a 5-minute match to get the crowd hot a little bit for this one. Lots of celebrities on this show. One of the particular notes, making his reappearance to WrestleManias after being a big part of WrestleMania 4 and 5 is Donald Trump. He was ringside for the majority of this show with his crew of cronies. I don't even know who they all were, but they were having a grand old time watching good old WrestleMania. Ringside, front row, right in front of the camera. Quite the spectacle there. Willie Nelson kicked off with America the Beautiful as well. So just a couple of celebrity nods there. There's definitely more to come I'll talk about during the rant here as we move through the pay-per-view. Commentators to kick off the show, Gorilla Monsoon and, of all people, Hacksaw Jim Duggan coming out in Americana regalia to open the show. That was because Bobby Heenan was managing the tag team in the first match, and that was Haku and the Barbarian against the Rockers to open up WrestleMania 7. 10.5 minutes on this match. I thought it was acceptable opener by sure. No question about it. Not a very strong match, but it got the crowd going a little bit. I went 2.5 stars on it. Gave it a little bit of time at 10 minutes, but it really didn't develop into too much of anything other than some intensity trying to get going to kick off WrestleMania. Crossbody from Shawn Michaels to Haku for the finish. Then after that, Bobby Heenan joins commentary. Hacksaw Jim Duggan leaves the booth. Then we move back into the celebrity stuff here. We're in the back. Mean Gene is with not only 1, 2, but 3 different celebrity guests for the show. They were a pretty significant part of this WrestleMania as well. Regis Philbin, Marla Maples, who was Donald Trump's gal at the time, so there explains how that connection was. And as well, Alex Trebek, the host of Jeopardy, is a big part of WrestleMania. They were doing interviews with different wrestlers, things like that. There was a lot of interaction with these celebrities at WrestleMania 7. Moving into the second match, Texas Tornado Kerry Von Erich against Dino Bravo. This was one of a starting trend with this WrestleMania, which looking back, he probably could have trimmed some fat on the show, but there was a lot of like 3-minute, 2-minute, maybe 4-minute matches that really did not even need to be on this show. This was one example. There was no need for Texas Tornado and Dino Bravo. There was no feud going on between these guys. There was no program that was established at all. No reason for this match to be on here other than just to have them on the show. 3 minutes, I gave it a 1.5 stars. Discus punch. They were moving pretty good for what it was, which was a 3-minute squash, essentially, in this one. Remember match number 3, British Bulldog over the Warlord. You know, I remember back when I first watched this and subsequent, viewings of WrestleMania, I didn't care for this match, but watching it again, I thought it was all right. I gave it 3 stars, about 8.5 minutes. Bulldog won with a power slam. It was just a power match. That's all I can say. These two guys were just throwing down. I enjoyed it watching it back now, many, many years later. That was a decent little match. Wasn't anything to call home for, but 3 stars. It was the best match so far of the 3 on the show. Then we get into match number 4, which actually exceeded the previous match, and that was the tag title match with Hart Foundation and the Nasty Boys. Man, I liked this match. Looking back, this was fun. And this was Bret Hart's last match as part of the original Hart Foundation with Jim Neidhart. So there you go. I actually wasn't aware of that little factoid until I got to look into the information here that this was for sure their last match together as a team. Bret Hart moved on to singles right away, right after WrestleMania here. And then by SummerSlam time, he was beating Curt Hennig for the Intercontinental title. Macaulay Culkin of Home Alone was shown to open the match here. He was in the crowd having a good old time. There was a line from Gorilla Monsoon about him not being home alone or something like that. Good match though, about 12 minutes, 10 seconds I had for clock time, but the Nasty Boys went over by nefarious means with Jimmy Hart's megaphone. But this was a well-worked match. I thought for the last Hart Foundation match, it was pretty strong. And put over Nasty Boys pretty strong as well. This was what I call a win-win in terms of matches. 3.5 stars. One of the better matches on WrestleMania VII, for sure. Let's get into, on the other hand, one of the worst matches in WrestleMania history. And that was the blindfold match for match 5 of the pay-per-view card. 6 match total if you count the dark match. Jake the Snake Roberts over Rick the Model Martel. They gave us 8.5 cringy minutes of shit. Right as the match starts, we all kind of know this now if we've watched WrestleManias in the past, but that infamous moment where you see that they're putting the hoods on and you can actually see the little area that they can see out of before the match even starts. So we had that to showcase this tremendous, shitty WrestleCrap style match for sure. This will still hold up the test of time as one of the worst WrestleMania matches ever. I think Pat McAfee and Vince McMahon would be in that category as well from last year. There may come a time and a place where I break down a top 10 takes of the absolute worst matches in WrestleMania history. This match will be on there for sure, along with McAfee and Vince from last year. This was just garbage. Roberts won with a DDT kind of out of nowhere, very contrived. I gave it a 0.5 star. This was fucking bad. It's lucky I didn't give it. I gave it a 0.5 star for a few points of creativity. That's really all I can say about this one. Marla Maples, Donald Trump's beau, was in the back, celebrating with the Nasty Boys and the Heenan family. It was kind of an awkward, cringy segment for sure. Then we get into a situation that started here at WrestleMania 7, and that is the streak of The Undertaker beginning at this pay-per-view with Undertaker against Jimmy Superfly Snuka. 4 minutes, 20 seconds of a pretty much of a squash by Undertaker. I went 2 stars on it. Tombstone for the finish. Snuka was having a little bit of trouble keeping up with Taker at parts. But all in all, a solid first match for Undertaker and his career streak at WrestleMania. Then we go from one career streak starting to the career-ending match. Macho Man Randy Savage, Ultimate Warrior, 21 minutes of greatness. I will argue till the day I die that this was one of the best matches the Ultimate Warriors ever have. Prove me wrong, folks. This match was so good. The drama, the electricity, the crowd interaction, the drama at ringside with sensational Sherry, who did a great job in her role, very much physically getting involved in this match. I'd be like, everybody involved really a home run, from the Elizabeth and Macho Man reuniting part to the Ultimate Warriors. Like kind of war of attrition in this match. This was like just the pinnacle of this program. This was what I would consider the true main event of WrestleMania, because it was such a strong match, such a strong finish, such a strong post-match. There was just so many moments of excellence in this match. We know that the whole reuniting with Elizabeth at the end. I'll tell you, at the sports bar that I was at, there was people crying when I was a child at that moment, even at that sports bar I was at. I'll leave it at that. I went 4.5 stars for this one, which is a high praise. This was one of the best matches of the WWF period of this time, I would argue. In many years, one of the best matches, maybe since WrestleMania 3's Macho Man and Ricky Steamboat match. I think this was the best WrestleMania match since that point. I will put that out there for everybody to chew on. Everyone's roles were perfect in this. They took an intermission. Come back. We have Regis Philbin and Alex Trebek doing interviews. Regis interviewed Taker. Alex Trebek interviewed Demolition and Mr. Fuji. Regis Philbin came back with a really weird interview with Tenryu and Cattell. And then Alex Trebek finishing off with an interview with Jake the Snake Roberts. We move into match 8. We have a bit more to go here. This is the match with Tenryu and Cattell, against Demolition. 4 minutes, 44 seconds of complete a fucking mess of a match. I went a star and 3/4, probably being generous. I don't know if this was a language barrier thing, but none of these guys were on the same page at all in this match. 10 powerbomb smash for the win, but this was an epic mess of a match for sure. Lord Alfred Hayes takes over in commentary as Bobby Heenan joins the next match. That's the Intercontinental Championship. Big Boss Man against Mr. Perfect. DQ finish on this one, a really sour finish. 10:46 of decent work, I thought. I went 3 stars at it. Heenan family interfered for the DQ. Andre the Giant ended up coming out at ringside, was confronting Bobby Heenan. Ended up with a belt shot to Mr. Perfect as well for a near fall finish that kind of looked like Boss Man was maybe going to win the match. Melee afterwards, Andre the Giant was kicking some butt at ringside on the Heenan family and Haku and Barbarian. And then at the end, kind of an alliance between the Boss Man and Andre the Giant that I don't think really went anywhere past WrestleMania here. It's kind of a weird, awkward moment in WrestleMania history, I guess, if you're looking back. Mean Gene was with a bunch of other celebrities at ringside after this match. Donald Trump. And I think if I remember on watching this live, there was some sort of issue with the microphone the first time. They had to come back to it. And then they had Trump again. Chuck Norris. Henry Winkler, the Fonzie. Lou Ferrigno, the Incredible Hulk. They were all a part of this segment with Mean Gene at ringside. Moving to match 10 through 10 and 11 were very quick matches. Earthquake against Greg Valentine in 3 minutes, bordering a squash. I went a star and a quarter on that one. Then a for sure big time squash. 59 seconds, match 11. Legion of Doom over Power and Glory. This was because both Paul Roma and Hercules were hurt. I believe Roma had a bicep or tricep issue, and Hercules had a groin pull. So that's why this match went absolutely nowhere, and it was a quick squash. And I went a star and a half on this one, just slightly better than the Earthquake match with Valentine. Match 12. Looking back, a disappointment of a match, considering the build of it. Virgil versus Ted DiBiase. Virgil wins by count out. When DiBiase is distracted and focusing on Roddy Piper at ringside in crutches, who's with Virgil, Sensational Sherry gets involved in this match, starting her alliance with Ted DiBiase as well. Kind of a mess of a match all around. At 2 3/4, I went on it. They gave it 7 minutes, 41 seconds of time. Virgil was pretty damn green at this point still. That was a big detriment to this match for sure. We move on to the last parts of this show. Sergeant Slaughter did a promo and back with Sean Moon. They're recapping the whole Iraqi situation. Mountie in a very quick match with Tito Santana. 1 minute, 21 seconds. I put a 3/4 of a star on this one. It was so quick. Then we get to the main event. Hogan, Sergeant Slaughter, Alex Trebek, ring announcer, Regis Philbins joining commentary with Gorilla in the Brain and Marla Maples, the timekeeper. 20 minutes, 30 seconds on this one. I went 3/4 and 3 1/4 star for this main event with Hogan and Slaughter. I thought it was decent. It was one of the better Hogan matches that we had seen, at least in quite some time at this point. Hogan's first blade job since WrestleMania V, if I recall. And a great ending. Looking back as a kid, I was all about Hogan getting that belt back. And fans went home happy. Like I said, I still consider Macho Man and Randy Savage Ultimate Warrior the true main event on this show. It was the best match of the show for sure. But is what it is. Strong WrestleMania as a whole. I don't know where it would line up in the best of all time. Probably somewhere in the middle. One big thing that hurt this show was the inclusion of so many matches that were just a few minutes of work that never went anywhere. They were almost like a Monday Night Raw match. There was a lot of that on this show. If they would have cut that, and we would have been to a more of a normal length of a pay-per-view, 2.5 to 3 hours, I think this would have helped WrestleMania a lot, flowing a lot better on this one. That is it, folks. Taking a look back at WrestleMania VII. Come on right back here later. Impact Sacrifice next.